some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes, in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. You know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. Zetovia salve, made from natural and organic ingredients, good for inflammation, poor circulation, hemorrhoids, yeast infection, lip sores, dry coughs, eye pain, minor cuts and bruises, and ready to purchase at botanicaherbalco.com. 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 You're listening to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM in the Inland Empire. Also streaming from the KCAARadar.com website, MBR Radio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Google Play, Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, Podcast, Stitcher, Amazon Radio, just to list a few. Oh yeah, and the streaming videos are located at Tiki Live or Rumble under the Farron Dozier Show. Catch us live or catch us on the archives at Farron Dozier Show. Shout us out, What's the Count? Visit farrond.com for more information. All right, good day to you all. Welcome to the next episode of the Farron Dozier Show, episode number 14. You believe that? 14 episodes since I've been back doing my military talk show, the Trench Talk segment here on MBR Radio Network. Again, appreciate them for allowing me to bring this conversation to their network. I've been doing this Trench Talk segment for about take that back, since 2013. So it's been a few years now. I utilize it as just segments for the last couple of years. But then after meeting the gentlemen here at the MBR network, they were like, bring your show here, bring it. I'm like, all right, let me see if I want to do a full show. But then you know what? I was just reminded how important this conversation is, not just for myself, but for others to share their story. And really at the end of the day, is to create this space of relatedness. For us as veterans to back, between each other, but also for those of you who did not serve, I wanted you to be able to have a sense of relatedness with us. Don't try to understand us. Don't try to understand me. I don't understand me. But what I would like for you to do is relate to me and relate to the guests, because given these situations and circumstances and, concerns and worries or whatever that is, what would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? And yes, you may not be able to fit my size 12 boots, but I bet with your imagination, you could put yourself in the conversation with us and see how would you react to life when those circumstances come up. So that is really why I do this. It is my own personal therapy, just being able to stay connected to the military community, those who served. I'm not a combat veteran. However, we all trained for that situation to happen. And for some of our brothers and sisters that had to go overseas and deal with those kind of situations, everybody reacts and responds differently, right? And we've seen, up until today, looking back, even the Korean era, the Vietnam era, there were some eras that were really tough for human beings to deal with, and even our eras of the Iraq and Afghanistan. So just listen to the conversation, find your space. If you have questions, make sure you hit me up at Farron Dozier Show on Instagram, at Farron Dozier, Facebook, Twitter, also Instagram, and be a guest. You're more than welcome to come and share your story. I'm looking for guests all the time. There's a lot of 50-something Mondays, 52 Mondays. So there's a lot of Mondays, that I'm looking for guests. And I don't like to do reruns. So if I have to pre-record a show to air it for that day, I'd rather do that than to actually run the old episode. Not that I won't do it, but if I can negotiate and run a pre-recorded episode. So if you can't be here, 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, don't let that bother. We can negotiate a time for you to be a guest, and I can pre-record your episode and we can air it for that day. All right. So with no further ado, we're going to get right into this episode. How can I say this? There's no other way to say it. I am a lupus supporter. This is Lupus Awareness Month. This is May. And becoming a lupus supporter for myself, I've had nothing but fun with the lupus community. One of my soldiers was in Afghanistan, and I remember that his wife battled lupus, and he was a reservist at the time. And, he was on his third tour. And for me, it was like he was putting himself, at risk so that his family can have those full-time medical benefits, for his wife to have her medical coverage, whatever that reason is that we join the military and why we do what we do in the service. And he was in a car bomb, a roadside bomb, and we thought he had died with the information that we got, but we found out that he did survive, but he was severely burned. And I was in the rear, and I just wanted to do something to acknowledge his life, of what he was giving this country, but also what his wife was battling. So he's overseas battling in a foreign country while she's here in the United States battling this foreign disease. And it was something that God put on my heart. And I reached out to the family, and they said it was fine for me to do an event for them. It was November, so it was close to Christmas and Thanksgiving. So I wanted to just bring awareness to the soldiers who weren't overseas with him, because in our unit, they pulled different soldiers to go to different missions. So we didn't go as a whole. And so he was out doing his thing. And I wanted the soldiers in the rear to understand, what was going on in his family and to acknowledge them. And in doing that, I met a young lady from Lupus LA who was an advocate. And when I shared with her about the event that I was going to put together, and I described my soldier and what happened to him, she asked me, "Wait a minute, what did you say?" She was like, "Did you say a car bomb in Afghanistan?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she was like, "My friend was in a car bomb in Afghanistan, but he died." And when I was able to go back and find more research, my soldier and her friend from high school was in the same vehicle. And so he died in that vehicle, in that car bomb, in that roadside bomb. And so right then it was like, okay, God, I got it. This is a community that I get to use my platform in to share their stories. Back then, Lupus LA didn't have a podcast. And so I was able to bring guests on and have the lupus community share their stories. That started in 2011, 2012, 2013, and so on. And so since then, 2011, that event, I've been a lupus supporter. I've had such a great experience. They have a lot of fun, regardless of what they're dealing with in their life. They know how to, and so does my sickle cell community. I'm a part of two major communities, my sickle cell community, sickle cell trait, and then this lupus community. And I saw that I wanted to share that platform to give them a voice as well, right? And then I found that some people with sickle cell trait and disease have lupus as well. So then it was like, okay, then I get how important this conversation is. And I've been sharing my platform ever since. And so today I have a guest who's helping me not only talk about our military experiences, but also how she manages her lupus today as well. So I please hope that you stay tuned in and listen to this conversation. As we know, how can I tell you, but you know, we all deal with something. Some of us suffer in silence. Some of us deal with different types of afflictions. The Bible talks about them as afflictions. Sometimes we're born with these afflictions. Sometimes watching too much CNN and TV can cause afflictions. Sometimes our environments, sometimes how we think that we live in our living conditions as poor, as the world labels people homeless. Those kind of situations are difficult for human beings to handle. And sometimes those afflictions can cause health complications, right? So no one escapes it. No one escapes it. And if you have been blessed to have to not deal with any chronic illnesses or anything like that, just stay prayed up and be aware and just, again, what's in your heart? A lot of stuff in our heart. Stress is a lot of chemical release in the body, those white cells, those free radicals. A lot of things can happen on in our body that we're starting to understand what can cause these type of illnesses. Mine, I was born with a sickle cell trait, not knowing that was going to be an affliction in my life the day that I collapsed. But I had no idea that the sickle cell trait could cause problems. And so a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that we have these inherited genes that we have to manage. And then when they express themselves, we have to be ready to take care of ourselves and take care of those situations, our health. Our health is wealth. That's what they say. It's not a cliche. Try it. When I'm sick, I'm down and I'm not trying to do nothing else but deal with that, right? So just be mindful of people and what they're dealing with. Some of the things that you see with illnesses, there aren't physical outside the body. Sometimes there are things that we deal with internally. So just be mindful. This is why this show is about relatedness, all right? So now that I set the tone for you, let's bring our guest up today and get into this military experience. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time out today to share your story with us.
Thank you.
All right. Just give us a little bit of background and we'll get started with the conversation. How's that?
A little bit of background of me as a person.
Yeah, as a person, yeah.
I'm from Wichita, Kansas, born and raised. Wichita. We're the air capital of the world. And I grew up with a military family, but they were all males.
Okay.
And I was the first female in my family to go in the military, and that wasn't very looked at very well.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but I had a rough growing up as a young girl. My parents were not around. I had my grandmother raise me. She was phenomenal. I made sure, though, because of some of those trials as a young woman, that I always wanted better.
Yeah.
So I made sure, like, to graduate high school. And I was the first one out of my family. Neither one of my parents had ever graduated.
Wow.
That led me to go to college. Became the first one in my family to go to college. So I started breaking, generational curses and setting standards where my siblings started following after me.
Cool.
And
Thank
that
you.
was
Thank you for sharing. Now let's go back. What was your experience of yourself growing up as a little girl? What was that like?
a lot of fear, a lot of confusion on what love was, not really being shown proper affection or proper nurturing by my parents. However, my grandmother really made up for that. She was she was my mom. Even my own mother has said that was your mom because she was. And I thank God that she was able to be that pillar of strength and kind of guide me, even though I went through a lot.
I can definitely relate to you. There was a short span from age 2 to 8 that I lived with my grandmother. My mom was there, but my grandparents had this bright idea to let me stay with them while my mom got her life together. She was young at the time, and so I was 2 years old, which made a lot of sense at the time. But for me, it was very emotional. That being now raising my mom for those, not just being in the womb for 9 months, but then the 2 years, and then being with my grandmother. Like, I knew that my grandmother was my grandmother, but she was also mama because she was mama to my uncles and my aunt. So somehow in my mind, I knew the difference,
Right.
but I knew who was who in that. So thank you.
Right.
Thank God for the grandmothers who stepped up and do it from love with no expectations, just with pure love, no conditions. What do you want to say about grandma?
She was amazing. We used to call her Granny MacGyver. She could fix anything. She was an immigrant from Mexico City.
Okay.
She could barely speak English, but she taught herself and she became, a citizen. In fact, I was with her when she got her citizenship. I didn't know what was happening until I was much older.
Yeah.
But I was about 4 or 5 years old, and we were on a baseball field, and there was a bunch of people, and they were saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and not knowing that they were being sworn in. Of course, I'm a little kid, so that, but it was just things like that always attracted me to the military, seeing the flag, seeing my grandmother so proud to become a citizen, and, just seeing my uncles that had served and how their lives were a lot better than my life was growing up. So, yeah, I definitely, it was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Now, we know that our parents are the two most important people in our life. A lot of people won't admit that, but if you do look back at child development and things like that, that our parents are the two most important people in our life. And sometimes, a mother and father, that's a role for people, right? And so we lose sight of that, especially when we're children. We don't really understand what it is to be an adult, what they're dealing with in their life, and so sometimes mothers and fathers, there aren't parents because the parent sources that child, not just physically, but emotionally. There's a lot that goes into being a father and a mother, but also being a parent. And so, understanding, looking back today as an adult woman, what do you want to say about your dad, if anything?
Both of my parents at a very early age became parents. I have an older sibling. He actually passed away the day before his first birthday. And that set the precedent for my parents' life. They never let go of that hurt.
Wow.
And as you know, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And, I have heard so many things. I've been through so many, training as far as my job in the military. But sometimes you have to forgive your parents because they're growing too.
Yes.
I found myself as a parent myself.
Yes.
Sometimes I unintentionally took out my frustrations on my children, and I've had to apologize. Like, hey, I shouldn't have talked to you that way. This is really what's bothering me, so on and so forth. But my grandmother always would speak these words of wisdom to me growing up. And I didn't really understand why she was so repetitive on them until now, as a grown up and as a grandma myself. Definitely like, wow, okay, I get it, grandma. I get it. This is, when I deal with my sons, one of the things when they turned adults, I remember my grandmother would say, be what you needed when you were that age.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sometimes think about that with sons and say, you know what, I'm just not going to be able to pick this battle because this is not one I'm going to win until you're ready to listen.
Wow. Beautifully said. I like how you said that your grandmother, she planted those seeds, right? And that's what, that's what
she
our
did.
parents try to do, our grandparents, our loved ones. We try to plant seeds, especially as children, so that when you grow up, you have that stuff that your heart can go look for to try to make sense of life. And so I appreciate you for saying that. And I can't even imagine as a parent to lose a child. So sharing the grief part of that, I mean, who, there's nothing to say. Like,
no, yeah, my parents, my father, my mother, they made a lot of choices based on their grief, and it was not a good thing, but again, that was a different time, a different, generation. And it was definitely a different way of dealing with emotions back then than now.
Yeah, for sure. So growing up with grandma, sports, like what were you doing as a little girl?
I was a ballerina.
What?
For a long time. Yes, I did ballet. Actually got to points. I used to do tap dancing and cheerleading, and I joined JROTC. And I was 15. I had a two-day-old baby in my arms.
Wow.
And I had to fill out a class. And they asked, this guy was like, I think you'd be great joining my class. And I'm looking at him in this uniform thinking, I have a 2-day-old baby, sir. What am I going to do in uniform? And he said, no, we can accommodate you, because I was going to be out on maternity leave and so forth. And he said, when you get back, we can put you in there. So I said, you know what? I'll just try it. Whatever. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it literally was the best decision, ever. It set the precedent for later on in life.
Wow. You said a 2-year-old baby.
2-day.
2-day-old.
Yeah.
Baby.
I was only 15 when I had my son. I turned 16 2 weeks after he was born.
No kidding.
And I had to go enroll in school. And my baby was 2 days old when I had to enroll in school.
Wow.
So I was a young mom.
What was that like, being a young mom?
It was very frustrating. It was very, I'm being treated as a child because of my age, but then I have to make adult decisions because I have a child. Yeah. And I'm having people who want me to be a kid at school, but people at home are wanting me to be an adult and be a parent. And, so it was difficult. It was very difficult. I encourage my children, and I thank God that we broke that cycle of, teen pregnancy. None of my children had kids while they were in high school. Yeah. In fact, my son who's 26 just made me a grandma, and so that's, but that's something totally different. But yeah.
How did you deal with that, emotionally, mentally? I know my mom had me at 18, and she was her last couple of weeks in high school. Like, how did you manage that? Was there,
people wouldn't treat me very nicely, even instructors, I am biracial. My mom is Hispanic, my father's Creole. And I remember, because I had an adopted father that my mother was married to who was white, he had knew the principal of my school. And I remember before having my son, the principal had put it in my ear because they knew my adopted family that I should probably have an abortion because no white man would want me with a black man's baby. Wow. And I was like, but my father's black. In my mind, I'm thinking, this doesn't really go, But again, I was only 15. I don't really know how you process that.
Are you in on mute? It's okay.
there was a lot of adversity. I remember hearing a lot of times, "Oh, you've made a mistake," and I had to correct people and say, the act of having sex unprotected at such a young age, that was the mistake.
Yeah.
But my son is not a mistake. He would not be here if he was not meant to be here.
Right.
So that's something that I've always corrected people on when they, say that. Oh, how do people treat you? They treat you like you made a mistake. And yeah, but I always would say, no, it wasn't a mistake.
Such a huge conversation even today.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever go back and talk to young teenagers before they have children, or even when they have those that at your age at that time? Do you go back and have those kind of conversations?
Yeah, a few years ago, when I was still in Kansas before I came out here to San Diego, I used to mentor to a church summer camp.
Wow.
And it was for teens who were pregnant.
Wow.
And I would teach them how to sew. And in that conversation, we would have conversations about maybe what was going on with them at home, kind of what led them, different things. And then they would see that I was in the military. And what? You went in the military, but you had a baby when you were young?
Right.
And, how did you do this? And so we would talk about it. And,
Beautiful.
I would use those times. And I'm getting ready to do that here in San Diego. In fact, I've been invited out by the Navy and the Marine Corps at MCRD.
What?
Yes, to do a Broken is Beautiful workshop with.
Come on.
Yeah,
That's
so I'm really
cool.
excited. I'm really excited.
Again, taking that experience and then later in an age using that. God allows us to go through things in life that shapes us. None of it is all for the good. As much as, like you say, people talk to us and they think it's a mistake and all this stuff, like we have no idea what God's plan is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times the world has so many opinions about life, but do we really sit down and ask the person what's going on with them in their life at the time? Even if you're a teen, like we discount our children, we discount that 5-year-old mind that oh, he's just 5, he don't know. You better believe that 4-year-old, 2-year-old know what's going on.
Exactly.
That brain is developing. So child development is so important, and just understanding personal development and the growth and what it is to be a human being. Like if you got in touch with that, you would really give up your opinion about a lot of stuff that we talk about.
Yes, definitely.
And thank you for sharing that. I didn't, like I said, this conversations are all organic, so I don't know.
That's okay.
That's why I do it this way, because I want to be, in the moment with you when you share whatever you share. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So you did the sports. 15, you had the son. At what point did the military show up? Wait, hold on. No, wait. You said you went to college too. Hold on.
I did. So I graduated high school.
Yeah, go ahead.
And at that time, I should have went in the military, but I didn't. I got a job.
You're on mute again.
I was a manager of a candy shop. And I met my second son's father. Mm-hmm. And he was getting ready to graduate. He was getting ready to go to a D1 school because he was the number 1 running back at that time. Oh, wow. And so when I found out I was pregnant and so forth, we got married. We had our son, went to college. But that relationship, we were kids, just completely kids. And it didn't last. Our marriage lasted about a year. Mm-hmm. And we split up. And then in between that time that I've been split up with him, I met another guy, and we were just friends. We wound up, getting together. We have a baby, and it was a little different because now I'm older, mm-hmm. and my son's father is older. I really wanted to go into the Army at this time, and he was in the Navy. Mm. So, there was a lot of protests from my family. Like, you shouldn't leave your children. You shouldn't go in. You're just leaving because you don't want to take care of them. That was the furthest thing. I had all sons, and I wanted to show them that a woman could be feminine and strong at the same time, and just despite a lot of adversity and a lot of no's, I went in anyways.
Wow. So I know, well, were you married at the time you joined the service?
No,
So
I
you
was
had to
single.
have a family. You had to have a family plan
I had
and
a
all.
family plan. Yep, I had a family plan. My brother and my sisters were in my family plan,
That's cool.
and they were willing to help out because they knew how we had grown up, and it was huge. It was huge to kind of make it out that way. It was honorable. So my siblings were very supportive, even if the elders in my family weren't. My
Yeah.
siblings were.
Before we take this public service announcement break, what do you want to say about your siblings?
I love them. They're, some of us, we've grown apart, and some of us are very close. And I love my family. I do.
All right. Thank you for sharing so far this first half of the episode. Again,
No
so
problem.
important for people to just hear, check the relatedness, check the
Yeah.
relatedness in yourself. And like she said, like sometimes when we think about our opinions about people, we don't really understand how hurtful sometimes we can be with others, right? In our opinions. I don't think God gave anybody the sticky note that said you get to judge mankind on what's right or wrong or good or bad or things like that. So for those of you who really believe that your opinions are the truth, I mean, they're your truth, not saying that's your reality, but there could be another truth out there that you might want to get in contact with yourself and kind of listen to other people before you make responses. So we're going to play this public service announcement, and we'll come right back for the second half of the Farron Dozier Show, the Trench Talk segment. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes. In moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh,
too,
man,
bro.
that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. All right, welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show right here on MBR Radio. Make sure you go to mbrradio.us and check out all the different other shows that are on the network here. It's not just me. There's a plethora of other talk shows out there by veterans expressing themselves in all types of ways, from sharing their stories to sports. Like I said, all types of shows. So make sure you go check those out as well. All throughout the day, throughout the week. There's an episode for you to watch. All right, Shanell. Why the Army? Of all the branches, why the Army?
I was young and uneducated.
Wait a minute. I was in the Army too. Hold on. What do you mean uneducated? We would have chosen the Air Force, right? The Air Force?
Of course. I think all of us that do, we're like, dang, what were we thinking? I didn't really have any guidance, but I chose the Army because my grandfather was in the Army. My uncles had been in the Army. That's what I predominantly saw. I'm part Native, and one of the tribal elders, she was a WAC, a Women's Army Corps. And so it was, Army. So it was exciting to see that and wanting to just be a part of it, their excitement. So.
College, so you've been around people from different walks of life, I would imagine. What was that like, joining the Army, being with a boot camp full of women from all over the country?
So I usually say, the joke is that I say GI. I wasn't GI Jane. I was GI Shane, because the Army actually cuts off if your name is over 5 letters, the last of your letters.
Yeah.
So my last name was Smith at the time, and I don't have a middle name, so I became Shane Smith on paper.
Wow.
And when we were getting off the buses and drill sergeants are yelling at us, they're like, follow the paper. Whatever paper direction it says you're supposed to go, that's the line. Well, I'm going to Bravo Company, and that's the guys. And I'm having these drill sergeants scream at me, like, where's your battle buddy? I don't even know what a battle buddy is at that point. I don't know, drill sergeant. And, they said, where's your paperwork, female? And so I showed them, and then that's the first time anyone ever said, wait one, and then just walked away. I was like, oh, okay. So I guess I'm waiting now. So they had 2 males walk me over to Alpha Company, and they had actually thought I was AWOL because I wasn't there.
Right.
So after that got smoothed out, it was fine. I was already a mother. I'd already had children, been to college, like you said, been around different people. It wasn't really hard. Boot camp wasn't hard. The hardest part was being away from my family. It was the first time in my life that I found myself alone, in a sense. No children, no husband, no boyfriend, no nothing, just me and hundreds of other women. And we all have to achieve the same goal, So I actually enlisted as a cook in the Army.
Okay.
Again, not knowing much about the Army and not having a recruiter who was really looking out for me at that time. I actually qualified to be a linguist, to be several other jobs that were definitely not a cook.
Yeah.
And so I won an award in basic training for ministering. And it wasn't religious ministering. It was just being able to communicate effectively with drill sergeants and soldiers, be that go-between. And I think that go-between was because I was already a parent.
Right,
right. And I knew how to just navigate the how boot camp is.
Yeah, exactly. All
The
chaos.
drama. There's drama. And I had all boys, so there was always drama. Someone was always boxing and wrestling and something. So it just made it easier.
Yeah.
But then it wound up that I was like, well, what am I have to do as a chaplain assistant? Sorry.
Yeah.
I
Okay. No, you're good. Don't worry about it. It's part of the slide.
And I said, I saw the chaplain assistant in basic and it looked like he was just a secretary. And so I thought, well, that can't be too hard. And sure, why not? We'll do it. Little did I know what all it was going to entail.
Looking back, on your military experience, what do you take away from it today?
I'm a very spiritual person, and God really guided my path in my life, whether I knew it or not at that time. He was very instrumental in me joining the military, very instrumental in carrying me through, having me become a chaplain assistant. I was able to learn things as a chaplain assistant that had I not learned them as an adult, as a mom, I wouldn't have been able to help my family or my children. I learned a lot about battle fatigue stress disorders because when I was in OIF and OEF were just starting and everything was hot and heavy. Redeployments were crazy. And I learned a lot of compassion, a lot of how to be non-biased, how to kind of, for the lack of, look at all sides. I'm the devil's advocate all the time. I can look at it from both sides. And sometimes it's been frustrating, and then sometimes it's been a blessing.
Yeah. So it is Lupus Awareness Month. And
yes,
this is part of the, one of the reasons why I have you, for this day and this time. What was going on leading up to the lupus diagnosis?
So in 2006, I actually made history in the Kansas Army National Guard. I became the very first female to be a tabbed honor guard soldier. So I had the utmost honor of burying soldiers and bringing soldiers home. And it was phenomenal. Unfortunately, in 2008, I had a really bad accident. And in 2011, I was not getting any better. Although I had finally learned how to rewalk, all the broken bones, this and that had healed. But I just was not getting any better. The pain was getting worse. I was breaking out with rashes on my face, rashes on my body. I would feel like a Mack truck had hit me. Whenever it would rain, I would start feeling, a lot of pain in different areas of my body. And I got a phone call one day from my doctor, and she said, "Why haven't you come in and discussed your lupus results?" And I'm like, "What is lupus?" And so I went in and, I tell everybody, when you're diagnosed with something that's severe, never start Googling on Google.
No.
You're going to die. I don't care what you read. I don't care how you read it, but you're going to die.
You're going to die.
And so I was like, I guess I'm dead. I don't know. I had no clue what it was, but I started educating myself. I think that's something I instilled in my sons too. If we were faced with a problem, then we educate ourselves about it. What can we do about it? What can't we do about it? And go forward. And so I was blessed that I was sent to a pain management specialist. I'm highly allergic to pain medication. So it was very hard to treat me and get things under control, getting my blood pressure under control from being in too much pain, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
And I had to learn how to keep pain journals, had to learn how to watch the foods that I were eating to see what might be bothering my body. A lot of processed foods, eating out a lot. I get more flares. My fiance and I, we both have lupus. And that is kind of how we met. but his lupus is way different than mine. I have the SLE, the subcutaneous, where it's on my skin, where it's attacking my heart, where it's attacking, my lungs, my joints. For him, he's in kidney failure at the moment.
Yeah.
So, it's very different, our lupus journeys. But I think the blessing is that because we both have lupus, we know how to communicate with each other what's going on.
And for those of you who don't know what lupus is, or this is the first time where think you may know, it's autoimmune disease. Imagine you're the president and your Secret Service men start to attack you. That's pretty much, those white cells are created to fight off viruses, bacteria, issues like that. But then sometimes those white cells can't tell the difference between the viruses and the good organs, and so it attacks the body. And so now you have those white cells rising up and attacking the body, and they get expressed as these different pain complications or flares and things that she mentioned. So very, very, very important conversation about lupus. And so how did your family take on this conversation with the diagnosis of lupus?
Fortunately, my sons were fairly young. And again, having them educate themselves is something that I've always done. So we made sure as a family that we educated ourselves on what it was, what I could do, what I could not do. One of my sons, he's now in the Air Force, but he'd be like, he's my little researcher, and he'd be like, Mom, you can't be out in the sun from these hours to these hours of the day, because this is, when the rays are really high and UV rays are damaging to your skin. And with lupus, you should do this and that. So I was blessed that my family understood what was going on. I actually have a sister. My middle sister has lupus as well. Wow. And again, her lupus is worse than mine. She's terminally ill herself. Wow. And she has epilepsy and other things that attack her constantly. So being the eldest in my family, and I'm the second oldest, but I'm the eldest living, there's a huge gap, an age gap between the next siblings, so almost 10 years. So I was the big sister, and then I became the mom, kind of, So for my sisters, they looked to me a lot, to help them out, talk them through things. I remember my sister, when she got really ill recently, and she said, Sis, I feel so bad for all the times that you were at the hospital alone, because I can imagine how you felt. You never complained about it, but I could imagine how you were feeling, so.
That human experience of being alone, people experience that even with the crowd of folks around them. So, having to deal with that as on your own because of the health complications, the health stuff you're dealing with, is add that on top of that, How do you describe lupus when people ask you what is lupus? How do you describe it?
I let them know that it is an autoimmune disease. I let them know that my healthy cells are attacking. My body feels like it needs to attack itself. So for me, it causes severe pain and inflammation in my joints. I, have had a lot of arthritis, unfortunately. I have costeochondritis in my chest from how I broke all my bones, and it's from fibromyalgia. And honestly, one of the things is that, and I know the VA is doing a lot of studies right now, which I don't know if a lot of soldiers are aware, but a lot of us who have been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, it is because of some of the drugs that we received for our disease. And so there is a drug-induced lupus.
So they're trying to really find if that's
a correlation.
Be a correlation to that. Wow, that's cool that they're looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, because there's a lot of autoimmune diseases that soldiers are being affected by right now. And I know one for me, and it's because I used to sleep under mold. And I have pictures. Gosh. I have pictures from boot camp where you can see the mold. And I spent 2-3 months in there just under, and I had never gotten pneumonia or bronchitis until being exposed to that environment.
Wow.
So, yeah, there, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing
Yes,
because
yes,
a
for sure.
lot more soldiers will get treated properly, hopefully, and
Yes.
not feel so frustrated, that like what is going on. So,
Because lupus is, for some, is difficult to diagnose with all there's like
correct.
no real test that says, oh yeah, by this it's
Well,
lupus. Like, or
there's
have
a
they gotten better?
test. There's a test, an ANA test that can check.
Yeah.
However, if your body is not in a flare at that moment and your levels aren't showing up, then yes, it could be very hard to diagnose.
Yeah.
I know people that had it for years but didn't get diagnosed because they didn't flare up at that time, when they were having it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be frustrating.
Your military career and the lupus diagnosis, how did they handle you? Did they give you some care, or did they treat you like the wet towel and like, okay, you're done, your career is over, bye, see you? Like, what
I
was
would
that?
say it was a little bit of both. What I mean by that is our unit was deploying to Iraq at the time. And that was their focus. That was the mission, getting everyone ready to go.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking with my sergeant major because they had let me know that I would not be going on deployment. And I was kind of like, what? Like still in denial, I can do this. But I think my sergeant major all the time, he sat me down. He said, Smitty, he said, listen, I know what type of soldier you are. And I know that you're always going to fight. However, right now, could you wear all of your gear, carry your ruck, carry your rifle, and then if your chaplain gets injured, can you pull him off the field as you're instructed to? That was my job. And at that moment, in the condition I was, no, I could not, was the answer.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the it moment for me where I knew that my career as a soldier was over.
Yeah.
Now I'm still a soldier, but at, my serving time was done.
For sure. For me, I got out not by choice because my sickle cell trait exertion with the rhabdomyolysis. My identity was in a basketball player as a child, and then joining the military, my identity became that soldier, right? And I remember when it shifted from me in basic training, laying on that bunk at like 4 a.m, like, what am I doing here? Like, did you have one of those moments of like, what am I doing here?
But I would remember my sons. Yeah. That's what I was doing it for, my sons, for my children, to provide better, to show them better, and to show them that if you really wanted to achieve something, you could. I always knew I wanted to be a soldier. I just didn't know how I was going to obtain that goal. And then to serve in the capacity that I served in and be able to make history unintentionally, that was even, that was huge. My sons were extremely proud of me for it. They got to witness me at some funerals sometimes. Yeah. And, like I heard you mention about, like the Vietnam War and this and that. And my uncle served in Vietnam. And, when I deployed the first time, he said, hey, I want to talk to you. And so he was telling me some stuff. And he had never talked to me before about those things, Yeah. So I felt kind of like, even though I was grown, I felt like a big girl finally.
He talked to me.
Right. He's talking to me. And my uncle just, sat me down, told me a few things and, just of encouragement. And I didn't know how much even his service and my service would reflect each other at different times. When I was doing a funeral one time, and I forgot, I could bring my sons with me to the funerals as long as I drove my own vehicle. I couldn't drive a GSA.
Right.
So in the summertime, so that they could spend as much time with me, I would drive my own personal vehicle, and they would stay in the car and they would watch us perform our funerals. And then afterwards, we'd all go to lunch, and they just, they had the greatest time.
Wow.
Well, one time, and this is when the Patriot Guard got started. there was a guy named Fred Phelps out of Kansas, in Topeka. It was a church, and he was picketing our funerals. And this one particular funeral, they were throwing rocks and spitting at us in our uniform while we were carrying the casket. But we could not break composure.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, Terry Fletcher, he started the Patriot Guard in Mulvane, Kansas. And they would come before the funerals and line up. And whenever the protesters would start making their noise, they would just rev the bike so loud that it drowned out the protesters. But I had forgot about it. I mean, it was my job at the moment. You know how it is as a soldier. You don't really put much focus onto it. I mean, we were all angry. We were all mad. We work on our uniforms about 15 hours a day.
Right.
So they issue us a steam press. You know what I mean? Like, it's we have brass galore. We're constantly, you know, and so you just put on my uniform, and now I'm gonna have to refix it. But no, it was things like that you know, shaped my sons, made them more aware of, you know, what selfless service was and things of that nature. And I was thankful to be able to share that with them and show them that, you know.
I'm getting a little emotional because I want to ask this question before we get into your book. How is it being with another person that has lupus? Like, what is that like?
It's hard some days, honestly. It's hard because the progression of his disease right now is very serious. You know, he's doing dialysis, home hemodialysis 6 days a week. And he is such a fighter that it's just hard seeing him fight so hard. And he's not getting the results that he would like, you know. I don't see him as someone as less than, as I tell him quite often, because I see the behind the scenes, the pain, the struggle to just walk from the couch to the door, you know, things like that. And when I was really serious and really ill in my journey in the beginning of lupus, I was left. You know, I didn't have people there to really support me or encourage me. And all I knew is that I would want someone to treat me a certain way when I was sick. And I try. Now, I'm not perfect. You know, we have our arguments. And
of course, it's the relationships.
Yeah. we're both alphas in our own right. Even though he's never been in the military, he's very, very much, you know, like that. But he, you know, and he's a go-getter. He's definitely a go-getter. But it is sometimes it's hard.
I've had an opportunity to interview him and talk with him, so I know, beautiful man. And,
he is.
You know, all the prayers go up, you know, that God will be done in his life. And so we just thank you for sharing that. To me, it's emotional because I'm in a community of sickle cell, and we there's talks about you can't be with a person with sickle cell. Like, they have all these, what you can't do, but love is love is love is love. And like I said, in the beginning, we all going to deal with some kind of health something at some point in our life. Like, rarely does people escape.
Yes. I mean, you know, we've had that talk a couple of times. I know in the beginning it was really rough, I think, for both of us. We hadn't been dating very long before he went into kidney failure. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a journey for both of us, you know, learning, you know, I'm a nurturer. I'm someone who's always going to, you know, help out someone who's struggling in any way I can. But for me, it just was natural. I mean, we were in a relationship. I love this man. And I would hope that if the tables were reversed and I was that serious, that he'd be there for me. You know, and I know he would be. I know he would be.
I don't consider myself an author, but I have a couple of inspirational reads. What inspired the book? Before we get out of here, talk about the book.
Okay, so the first book is Veterans Unchained, and it was me and 18 other veteran women from all branches of the service, all ranks, you know, all nationalities. Mm-hmm. And the book was Veterans Unchained, Breaking the Cycle of Trauma One Link at a Time. Mm-hmm. Now, so we shared stories about our military service and how we broke cycles. the trauma that we experienced and how we broke that trauma cycle, so that it wouldn't affect our personal lives and the journeys that we still take every day, and struggles that we deal with in breaking from the stigmatism of some of that trauma. So that was the first book. The second book is going to be called The Chaplain's Assistant. And it is talking about, my life, talking about different things that my walk with God, and how he's really been just guided my life. And right before I went in the military in 2002, I found myself struggling really hard. And I sat down and I was writing a letter, but I was crying. And as I'm writing, I don't know what I'm writing, but when I'm done, it was a letter from God to me. And it took 20 years, but literally 20 years, everything God said, that if I would just trust him, came to fruition.
Wow.
And so in this book, I am really reaching out to young women and young men who have struggled with mental health themselves, or parents who have mental health issues, siblings who have, mental health issues. I'm talking about breaking cycles, bringing words of wisdom into this youth of ours. We are the elders now. Yes. And as much as we want to complain about how these children are acting and how they don't care and they don't listen, I remember our elders did the same, but they also did something about it. I remember when I was growing up, before I got home, if I had gotten in trouble, I got a whooping from everybody, and then got a whooping when I got home.
All the way home.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that you should, whoop kids now, although I think it's not a bad thing, but that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But no, I think that we have to step up. We have to step up, and we have to start sharing these words of wisdom with our children, with our loved ones, with other teens or whomever, that young men and women that we meet. You never know how you might be saving their life by just explaining something. Sometimes my son and I have a conflict, and my response to him is, son, I just want you to remember that I've been your age, but you have not been mine yet. And that's all I'm going to say. And I leave it at that.
Because you're going to find out one day. You're going to learn.
Right. You're going to learn today, pretty much, and he's had to say, you're right, Mom. I'm like, I've been your age, but you ain't been mine yet. So when you get there, then you can, So, yeah.
Thank you. I truly agree with you. My inspirational reads came from my personal development, depression, anxiety, suicide, then the personal development, getting back into church. And God has shown me how those strongholds, particularly they call them strongholds. And I found like 10 decisions over my life so far that I've created these strongholds because of my emotional unbalance, of the decisions that I made based off my emotions and the constant unforeseen consequences that I didn't like. So when God showed me that, it was like, I don't want to be an author, man. I'm like, I don't write a book. But then he showed me that you can write these, 12, 10-page inspirational reads that share this specific testimony that people can listen to, read, and maybe discover for themselves what they're dealing with in the shame, in the anger, in the depression, and the anxiety. Like, those are the strongholds in the Bible. And then, like I said, the afflictions that come before them, that what causes the depression and the upset and the strongholds, a lot of our afflictions that we don't trust God around. So thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to communicate with you outside of this. And again, if is there anything that I missed that you want to say before I let you go?
No, I'm looking at those who are in the San Diego area. You can reach me on Instagram at gishane78 or gishane78@gmail. Facebook, it's at Shanell Matlock. We are going to be having at MCRD in July for military children a Broken is Beautiful workshop. And so the analogy is I collect seashells, but I piece them together, and you would never know that they were broken. But that's kind of like us as humans. We get broken. Different life things make us broken, but that doesn't mean that we're not beautiful still. Exactly. It just means that we're pieced together a little bit different. Exactly. And so that's coming up in July. And so if they just keep checking the page, we'll definitely be putting the information out there.
Thank you for today's episode. I really appreciate you for helping me kick off Lupus Awareness Month, but also sharing your story on the Truth
Thank you.
Before, during, and after service. Shanell, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right, this is the end of the Farron Dozier Show right here on MBR Radio. You want more information about what I'm up to, feel free to go to farrond.com. That's where all of my purpose and passions are located at. If you want to know about sickle cell trait, for sure, go to wdconsct.org, especially rhabdo. Anybody can experience rhabdomyolysis, so we talk about that. That is one of my conditions that caused my sickle cell trait in my end of my career. And the link tree at Farron Dozier has everything I'm up to, from the spiritual conversations all the way down to the different talk shows and previous interviews. I got to get out of here. Next episode coming soon. Again, at Farron Dozier on all the platforms. If you want to reach out to me, be a guest. I have some questions. All right. Again, peace out. Shalom. What's the count? You're listening to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM in the Inland Empire. Also streaming from the KCAARadar.com website, MBR Radio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Google Play, Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, Podcast, Stitcher, Amazon Radio, just to list a few. Oh yeah, and the streaming videos are located at Tiki Live or Rumble under the Farron Dozier Show. Catch us live or catch us on the archives at the Farron Dozier Show. Shout us out, what's the count? Visit farrond.com for more information.